All right, everyone. It is Tuesday, March 5th. March 5th in Blacksburg means spring break in Blacksburg, but not for Coach Wags, not for the LAX team here. But today we are very honored and excited to have Kristen Skiera on the Sons of Saturday podcast, head women's lacrosse coach at Virginia Tech, also known as Coach Wags, and we can get into that. But Coach, how are you this morning? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's about time. I made it on here. I feel like I finally made it in life. I finally got on the podcast. So thanks for having me so much, Pat. But yeah, things are going well. I mean, we all woke up to a beautiful 70-degree day in Blacksburg. So we're getting fired up for our next two games that we have. We've got, over the spring break, 3 games in 7 days. We've got 2 more left. So we welcome Elon to Blacksburg tomorrow, and then Cuse on Saturday. So there is not going to be a better day to prepare than today. So we're excited just to get out on the field and get in some practice today.
Absolutely. Students won't be in town to come out and support, but if you're local around Blacksburg, obviously come on up and support the team. Spring in Blacksburg was always my favorite time of year, despite football season. I always just had this huge affinity for springtime. You got those sneaky, upper 60-degree days in February, and everyone's like, all right, let's go outside, let's hang out,
Yeah.
But if you could describe spring in Blacksburg, Coach, how would you describe it?
Gosh, you're right. I mean, I just love the energy. I mean, we're so lucky that winters are really short, literally, I think, it snowed one time, and that's not to say it can't snow again, but the winters here are remarkably short, a lot shorter than West Point, New York, where I was previously. And honestly, one of my favorite things, like you said, when you get these sneaky 60, 70-degree days or in early spring here, at Virginia Tech, one of my favorite things is that to go to my house each day, I have to drive down North Main and then take a right on Roanoke Street. So you've got the Greek housing. My favorite thing is that it'll be a late February Friday or an early March Friday, and it's 11 a.m. and everybody's outside starting their weekend early, and there's just so much energy. I love my drive to and from work on those days, because students are just being students and they're just enjoying college, and it's it just brings me back to my time. I always text my best buds from school. I'm like, oh my God, it's Friday at 12, everybody's out and outside enjoying, starting their weekend festivities. And I'm like, man, to be 22 again or whatever, 20 again, and be back in that environment. So that's one of my favorite things about this time of the year, is just the energy, everybody getting outside, and just enjoying it. So
nothing like it. Let the kids be kids, hanging out, enjoying a nice porch beer on a Friday, 68-degree Blacksburg day.
Yeah.
Coach, you mentioned West Point, and I know you're from Ellicott City, Maryland. You played at Duke, had a remarkable All-American career at Duke, semifinalist for the Tewarton Award, which is kind of it's the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy for lacrosse on both the men's and the women's side. And Coach graduated as Duke's career leader in assists and ranked second in points with 277 points, 116 assists at Duke. And Coach is also tied for 4th on Duke's career goal scoring list with 161 career goals, and won 4 regular season ACC championships and 1 ACC tournament title at Duke. So we're kind of making our way down here. We were in Durham for a little bit. We're in Maryland for a little bit. Obviously, West Point was your most recent stop. Now, fun fact of the day about Coach Skiera that we just found out. Coach Skiera did coach my senior prom date at West Point at Army. We saw the transition from club to varsity D1 at Army. So that was just the fun small world connection that we made. You guys kind of have similar names too.
I know. Yeah.
But we're going to kick things off here. I guess we've already kicked things off. But we're going to kick things off again with a Hokie haiku submitted by our friend Pete McGee. Pete says, a rising program, coach building something special, LAX team aiming high. Do you like poetry, Coach?
You know what? I don't, but my best buds from Duke, I have this one, Rachel, and she inserts haikus all the time into the chat, and it makes me feel so like intellectually not there, that I can't fire back with a really clever one. But I've got really clever, funny friends who subscribe to the haikus.
The group chats are always rolling. So you coached at Army for 7 years, and I mentioned that transition from club to Division One. You had 4 consecutive winning seasons as you departed at Army, handful of all Patriot League selections as well. As you came to Virginia Tech, what were some parallels that you could make, from building a program from the ground at Army, coming to a program that has some roots here at Virginia Tech, but also is, kind of on the up and up? What are some parallels that you've made so far, and some things that you've implemented at Virginia Tech, since you've transitioned here?
Yeah. I mean, I think the recipe was the same. I was fortunate to build my own program at Army. But to take over, when we came here to Virginia Tech, the program was 5-12. And so it was, our task was to rebuild the program. So it's, not super dissimilar from starting a program. And I think the recipe that I kind of always fall back on are 2 things, and that's to implement a consistent culture, where it's very clear what you stand for and what you don't stand for, and what your standards are in your program, and have great leadership and maintain that over time. And then secondly, it's just to recruit. And I think if there's one thing that West Point, prepared me for, it was to, or kind of developed in me, is just to be, just to be one of the best recruiters in the country. I mean, it's not easy convincing 16-year-olds to join the Army and to subscribe to 4 years of college life like that, and then serve 5 in the Army. It's not an easy sell. And so my staff and I really we worked so tirelessly in recruiting to West Point. And I think I always told myself and my staff that if we can have success recruiting here, we can have success recruiting anywhere in the country. And so that's definitely held true. And I think those 2 things are still forefront of my mind here, is how do we build an enduring championship culture here? How do we get the best recruits to Blacksburg? So that's that was the recipe. I will say too, I didn't have a life when I was at West Point. I do prioritize work, but over a lot in my life, and I probably shouldn't, and maybe as I get older, that balance will shift a little bit. But we just worked our tails off, at Army. And, I was fortunate to bring my associate head coach, Shannon Jacobetti, here to Blacksburg with me. And so, having just grit, a hard work ethic. I think we've certainly brought that to Blacksburg as well. We don't settle, and we're drivers, and we drive ourselves to be at the top of everything and top of our game. So that's kind of been the recipe.
Yeah, cool to see some parallels between West Point and Virginia Tech as well. Obviously, with the Corps of Cadets, with a military basis, and the fundamentals of Virginia Tech were built on the Corps and UPROSM. You have some roots in Blacksburg. I know your brother went here. I know your dad went here.
Yeah.
I know your aunt and uncle went to Virginia Tech. Any unique stories or unique background from some of your family members that they may have had in their time in Blacksburg?
Oh, I've got an epic story. But yeah, I think that is one thing that people can be surprised about, is in a lot of ways, this job for me did feel like full circle. I was raised with the understanding that Blacksburg was the center of the universe. That's how my dad raised me. We were always watching Virginia Tech football. I was fortunate enough to, as a kid, come down to a few games in Lane Stadium. But there was one, this is an epic story, Pat. And so I think I was in college, and Virginia it's got to be college. I was at least 21, and Virginia Tech is playing in the Orange Bowl. And so we have to head down to Florida, the whole family. And, my dad's we're going to go the Orange Bowl this year or whatever, right? That's the one that's down in Florida, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Virginia Tech was playing Cincinnati in the Orange Bowl, and Steve Wagbo is yup, we're going. He buys the oldest, most broke down Winnebago and he like tries to like throw some lipstick on it and fix it up. And he's like, and my older brother is 2 years older than me. He's like, he's so jazzed. He's like, Chris, Jess, like, we've got a Winnebago, like a Winnebago is secured. It's so cool, like, and we're going to go down to the Orange Bowl. So this thing is basically falling apart as we're like going south, like from Maryland down to Florida. I'm literally falling apart. Like we lost the bumper. Somebody sideswiped us, like an accident. And this is the funniest story. So we're get RV parking for this thing. I'm mortified. I don't want to be here anymore. Like I'm just like mortified. But we pull up into the RV lot. We park this like crummy old Winnebago. I'm just a little embarrassed about, but it's my dad. He's got these great. I mean, it's fine. It's fun to a certain point. And next to us rolls in this like beautiful like RV bus, like top of the line. It's Nick Lachey. It's from 98 Degrees, who's at the time, he's dating like Vanessa, and he was a Cincinnati bank, like, right? He went to Cincinnati.
No way.
So I and like somehow over the course of tailgating, I finagled my way onto like his RV instead of ours. But I'm just mortified. I mean, just like the juxtaposition of like our like broke down Winnebago that's missing parts, like lost in the commute. And then there's Nick Lachey and the nicest thing like next to us. And so that stands out in my mind of one of my favorite kind of like Hokie memories that my dad got me into. But yeah. And when I was in college, at Duke and my brother was here, like he would come visit me a lot, but there were definitely times that I came and like visited him at Tech as well. So yeah, it's pretty cool how those worlds have intertwined.
I mean, I'm so glad I asked, first of all. That's just so funny. We recorded a podcast last night talking about like the biggest Virginia Tech wins since the Michael Vick era, and that Cincinnati Orange Bowl game was on the top of the list. And
really funny.
The first time Tech won a BCS game in a long time, but also that Jason and Travis Kelce were on that Cincinnati team, which is another thing.
My gosh, were they really? That makes it way more epic. Wow.
Yeah, I think maybe 2 months ago, it was during the season when on the Kelce Brothers podcast, they were talking about losing that game to Virginia Tech in the Orange Bowl.
That's so funny.
I think they.
Do you know what year that was? Like, I'm trying to remember.
Yes,
if I was in college or not.
Yeah, that was after the 2008 regular season. Yep. So the game was like right early January 2009.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I was just 2 years out of college, so that makes sense. That matches up.
That's incredible. And Nick Lachey, didn't he like date Jessica Simpson way back when too? And like.
He was married. I think he was married to her, and then this was when he was dating. I forget her name. Is it like Vanessa Manillo or something? But yeah, they were on. They graciously like let me and my brother like come aboard.
It's unbelievable, Nick Lachey. Love it. All right, so Coach Skiera, Coach WAAGS, has the Virginia Tech background. One of us, we can confidently say, Coach WAAGS is one of us. What is something that you didn't know about Blacksburg, Virginia, Southwest Virginia, the NRV, prior to moving to Blacksburg?
Oh, that's a great question. I honestly didn't expect the weather to be as amazing as it was. Like dead honest, I didn't think it was like that far south. But the weather, I mean, the weather is gorgeous. And the swings you can have in the fall where it's like cool in the mornings and the evenings, but it can get up to like 80 degrees in the day. I mean, that is just like so me. So I didn't expect the weather. And honestly, one of my favorite things about this like small town living is just the people. I mean, I love being able to go into Kroger and, it's such a supportive community. You just get these comments like, hey coach, good luck. Or like, loved your game, great win, or it's just like running into like other athletes and they're like, hey coach. And they're just so nice, And so I do think that it was such a exciting breath of fresh air for me when I got to town, and to see that, just that generosity and that just spirit and just really great people. It wasn't just because I was a newbie in town. Like it's maintained over 3 years, and I think that's special. So
I think every single time we roll back into town, it's you mentioned the Kroger thing. The Kroger effect is real in Blacksburg. You always see someone and it's just great. Or go to Our Daily Bread or somewhere else around town, and you always bump into someone, and it's always a joy.
Yeah.
The weather thing, your West Point is showing a little bit because
Yeah.
Blacksburg weather, I wouldn't necessarily say it's one of the assets of Virginia Tech, but I always like to say you can definitely experience all 4 seasons in one day in Blacksburg. And as long as your recruits are visiting on, a nice spring weekend, maybe a fall, as long as it's not November, but October is perfect too.
Yeah.
I love it. Love it. So now we want to ask about Coach WAAGS, because Coach WAAGS, it's your Twitter name. If you Google, or not Google, if you look on Twitter, you search Coach Skiera, you're going to have some trouble. It's Coach WAAGS, 2 A's. Can you give us the background on Coach WAAGS and, your kind of reputation in the lacrosse community as Coach WAAGS?
Yeah, so my maiden name was Wagbo. So my nickname my whole life through college was WAAGS. So, and I feel like at different stops, I got married when I was at West Point, and I think the players there started calling me Coach Skiera, or, and started kind of alluding to me as like Skiera when I was at West Point. But I do feel like WAAGS is just like more comfortable. And then when I got here, there were some players who knew me as WAAGS because they were from Maryland. And so they started calling me WAAGS. And I was like, I love that. I think I would prefer you to stick with WAAGS, because it just reminds me of, kind of when I was in your shoes as a player. And so Coach WAAGS has definitely come back and stuck, and it's definitely more my comfort zone. And so that's it. It's not really a great story, but everybody in the profession calls me WAAGS as well. Cindy Timshaw, who's the head coach at Navy, who's the winningest coach in lacrosse. I was just texting her yesterday. They had a huge win against Richmond, and she wrote back and she said, "Thank you, Kristen." And I said, "Am I in trouble? You have never called me WAAGS or called me Kristen my entire life. It's either WAAGS or she calls me Boo. WAG. People started calling me Boo because it's Wagbo, and Cindy would botch it and say Wagboo. And so she started me. So anyway, she called me Kristen, thought I was in trouble. But yeah, everyone calls me WAAGS.
So you had the Wagbo family in the Winnebago on the way down to Miami.
You're on to something, Pat, because we called it the Winnewagbo.
T-shirts, make the podcast.
Wait, yes, T-shirts. We need the Winnewagbo T-shirts. That's hilarious.
Actually, yeah. I mean, I think we might be on to something. A little Sons of Saturday collab with the Hokies LAX team. Orange and maroon Winnebago, but it says Winnewagbo.
I love it.
Let's workshop that one. We'll send that into the graphic team and get something going.
Amazing.
So, you described culture earlier. I know that you described it, as gritty. Based on recruiting girls to come to West Point is not an easy thing to do. I know that's a huge part of your culture, but it also seems like there's a lot of part of your culture that's surrounded around kind of fun and silly and goofy. How would you describe, creating a balance between, the hardworking side and the, bring your lunch pail to work mentality side, but also, hey, we're a family and we like to have fun as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think, it's definitely twofold. First and foremost, we want young women here that want to win a championship more than they want most other things in life. You know what I mean? I think we want those hard-nosed, driven players that will do whatever it takes to win, and sacrifice for that, right? And so really prioritizing their identity and their role as an athlete, that's important to us, right? But I think it just, I think the theory is that you will never work as hard as it's needed to win and succeed at this level unless you're enjoying it, right? I think that's literally, it's some kind of psychology or whatever statistics are behind that, but it's just, you'll never put in the work necessary to succeed unless you're actually enjoying what you're doing. And so I think that was a huge thing when we got here. We're hey guys, why are you guys doing this? And I'll always say, I'm guys, this is way too much work to put in to be an ACC Division I athlete, like at an academic institution, it is way too much work to put in if you are not enjoying it. You know what I mean? So I think, if you're not enjoying it, hey, we got to probably look at, like, maybe you should be doing something else. But also, I do think it falls on us as a staff, as the culture makers and culture keepers, to make sure they're having fun and they're enjoying it. I mean, why? Yeah, it's why people play sports in the first place. Yeah, there's people, like me, that just want to win, beat other people all the time, but I also had a lot of fun, and I had great coaches who kept things creative and kept us on our toes so that we could always be reminded of, why we do it, which is to, make like lifelong best friends, to learn about ourselves in a safe environment, to, and so all that stuff. But yeah, we do like to have fun. And that's me too. When I was and that's one of the reasons why I absolutely feel so fortunate to be the head coach of this program and be at Virginia Tech, is because this experience reminds me so much. Like, literally, when I see our 18 to 22-year-olds, like, every day, I'm like, man, they are living the dream that I was able to live at Duke for 4 years. And it reminds me, just seeing them in their everyday habitat, whether it's in the performance center, eating meals with other student athletes, or, just like walking, like barely getting up the stairs after a hard lift, I'm like, that reminds me of my best 4 years of life. And so just being here and being part of their, best years of their life, just brings me a lot of, like, happiness into what I do. So
a lot of fun personalities are around the building within Hokies LAX, and we get to see that on the social media account every single year. Whether it's during the season, I feel like the Hokies LAX account always brings some flair to the table, but also during the off season, you can't say Hokies lacrosse without saying scaring people on Halloween around campus. And it's a unique part of the identity, as far as, what is the women's lacrosse team up to this week. But high level, we'll see videos of the staff scaring players on the team. But where did this originate? Any fun stories in particular? And is there a most difficult player on the team to scare?
Ooh, so it originated at Army, when Shannon and I were at Army, and it was like, just like my idea out of the blue. And I was like, it was kind of like, oh, we need to, like, these kids need to loosen up and have some fun in their lives, right? It's like really rigid, serious. And then I was like, and wouldn't it be funny if we started filming it? And so it became a big thing at Army. Like, I even got scared. Like, my athletic director from Army went in on a scare with my staff and our senior women's administrator to get me. And so it like kind of took off, at Army. And, like, I think at its core, as much as it's like keeps the players on their toes and, like, lighthearted, it is one of the funniest things to watch. Like, I just love watching people get scared, and I get scared so easily too. So I think that's why. And so we brought that here because it just became a tradition at Army, and we were like, we're gonna bring that here. And it's just a fun way to have some, like, behind the scenes, like, banter with the girls. And obviously they got me really, really good this year when they camped out at 7-Eleven, the 7-Eleven I go to every fall morning, and they were camped out there at like 5:30, and they got me so good. And, like, Jim Thompson, like, from our tennis coach, got me good. So, I just see if it just brings fun, morale, and, community. Like, I just love it. And it's a fun time to do it. And we really, everywhere we've been as a staff, Shannon and I have really got the team behind the holidays and celebrating them together. We are a family. And so being able to have fun and fellowship around the holidays is important. And we do not exclude Halloween from that.
I was going to say, I'm glad you brought that up, because I totally forgot the Christmas caroling for Liz Kitley. That was also a great highlight.
Yeah. Caroling, bringing cheer, around the athletic department. And we do our own stuff too. Like, we always go to the country club for our holiday party as a team. And, we have a Halloween party, which is a costume party, like, on top of the month of scaring. So there's a lot of stuff. And again, I think it just enhances their experience here. And I think, Whit Babcock, our athletic director, always talks about just memorable experiences, and winning is, I would argue that my favorite experiences from college were playing in a Final Four, winning an ACC championship. Winning is a huge part of that memorable experience for our student athlete, but also these enrichment opportunities for them to bond and grow and enjoy their experience off the field. That's important too. So.
Absolutely. So you've had some mentors in your career, obviously, You mentioned Cindy Timschel, and then whether you're at Duke or UC Davis, or even leading from the front at Army. But what is one of the most key pieces of advice that you have received over your years that you have begun to implement here at Virginia Tech?
Ooh, key pieces of advice. I mean, it may not be advice, but I think two things that have stuck with me are passion and fire. You know what I mean? I think my best mentors are still fiery, about their job, and they're passionate, and they don't let things slide. And they're always looking to, their drivers, like, hey, this isn't good enough. We need to keep going. We need to keep doing things, reinventing, staying on the forefront. And so that is something that stuck with me, that I'm like, when I lose that, I'm probably not a good coach anymore, so that fire, that hunger, that just passion for sport in general, whether it's passion for teamwork, passion for competitiveness, that's something that has really been impactful to me. And I think, my first job out of college, again, I worked for Cindy Timschel at Navy, and there's nobody that is more fiery and more passionate than her. And, she's kind of she's at the latter portion of her career, and still the most fiery person and passionate person. I mean, sports brings her to tears. That's how emotional she is about sport. And whether her team doesn't compete hard enough, it'll bring her to tears because they didn't compete hard enough, and so I think that has really resonated with me. And then something too, like when it's a big jump to go from an assistant coach, to a head coach, and something that always two things that always sat with me were, no one's going to care about your program more than you. And, it can be lonely at the top. And so those are two things that I always remind myself of. It's like, hey, I'm not always going to be well liked. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to be able to point fingers and say, you're the reason why we're struggling. It's me, and I do remind my team of that. Like, you are a reflection of me. This is what I saw from you today. I do not think that is a solid reflection of me. So what do I need to do? You know what I mean? To get us to where I want us to be. And so I do take that personally. I do feel like every time the team steps on the field or what they do off the field is a reflection of me. And that really just drives me to hold myself to a high standard, to have answers and solutions to problems, and be really positive person and action-based person. So I think those things have all resonated with me and impacted me today.
Absolutely. So talking about the season, we stand right now on March 5th, 4-2, 1-1 in conference, just coming off a loss against number 1 Boston College and a road dub at Louisville. Now, I know Olivia Regano just hit a milestone in her career, 100 goals. She had 5 goals against Louisville. Can you describe the impact that she has had on the program? I got to watch her on the podcast when you went on to Tech Sideline a few weeks ago, but would love to hear about, the impact that Olivia has had on the program thus far.
Yeah. I mean, I just think physically she's just a specimen, and her mental determination drives what her body does. Right. But to never give up on a play, to be tough, to shoot the ball harder than anybody else, like, out on the field. I mean, she works hard to assert herself physically on the field. And I think that's what we see from her every single practice, she just doesn't have an off switch physically. She really pushes herself. She takes a lot of pride in the work she puts in, and nobody puts in more work to be better at their craft than Olivia. And I think those are the standout things that, you can look at all the statistics. She's an animal in the draw circle. She does a lot for us offensively. She will chase down somebody with the ball in the ride, and so she's our physical kind of heartbeat out there that, I do think it's really important as a player. Like, I was lucky when I was in college, I had Katie Crest a year above me, and she would go on to win the Tewaaraton. She's in the Duke Hall of Fame. She's the only female women's lacrosse player from Duke that's in the Hall of Fame at Duke. And every single day I had something to aspire to, like her stick work, her dodging. That was really important for my development. And I do think that that's what Liv does for everybody else on our team, is like, whoa, she just did that really well. That's what I need to do,
And looking ahead, as we dive into March and April, this is where it starts to heat up, and this is where the passion and the fire comes out. You got Elon, you got Syracuse, Carolina, Notre Dame, UVA on the horizon. as we dive into conference play here, what are some of the key storylines that Virginia Tech fans who are getting into the lacrosse team should be looking out for?
Yeah, well, they should be looking out for our offense to improve. We're coming, I mean, in all honesty, like our JMU, with the 2 times we've been tested this year, we've really kind of honestly fallen flat on our face. I'm less than 48 hours out of this loss against Boston College. So I'm not quite over it yet, Pat. Clearly. But in the JMU game and then in the Boston College game and in 8 quarters of lacrosse, I feel like we've played one good offensive quarter where we played collectively, utilized all of our assets. And so that's got to change, that just has to change. And so putting a lot of emphasis to really just kind of figure out what it is that we need to get our offense clicking together. We've got a lot of parts. How do we put them all together and not get deterred, when we're met with a little bit of adversity out on the field. And so, I'm looking for us to play more consistently offensively. I want, our fans to see the firepower we have on offense, but we've got to put it all together and we got to play together and we got to play unselfishly. So looking, towards the next remaining 2/3 of our season, that's a part of our game that we got to get together. And when we do, it's going to be pretty and it's going to be fun to watch. I think the other storylines are obviously, our really talented young drawler. Right now we're doing really, really well. We beat Boston College in draws. That is a really big strength of ours. We're the only team in the nation with 2 players that have 35 or more draw controls. And that's with Olivia and Sarah Gresham on the draw. So, to continue our dominance in that area gives us really valuable possessions and allows our offense to do some work. So hopefully putting those 2 things together. But yeah, I want our offense to catch fire because when they do, they're fun to watch, super, super fun and creative and cohesive. So that would be my biggest thing to kind of look for moving forward. But yeah, we've kind of unfortunately fell short on 2 opportunities against ranked opponents. But the good news is we're in our ACC, and almost every week we're going to get another opportunity to go against a ranked opponent and get those marquee wins. So definitely remaining optimistic that what is delayed is not denied, and we still have those big wins ahead of us.
So we're going to move into a little bit of rapid fire. So I hope you're ready for some rapid fire.
Always am.
First of all, we've had a few football players say this over the past month plus when we've had it was Kyron Drones and Jalen Lane, and they both were attesting to they would rather have the Beamer barn have heaters than the football stadium get LED lights. Can you attest to the cold temperatures in the Beamer barn?
Yeah. Yes. And yes. And I appreciate them for acknowledging that because yes, our coldest practices have been inside. It's like an ice cube in there because you don't get the sunlight. Even if it's cold, like let's say it's cold and snowing, but it's sunny outside is going to be warmer than inside the Beamer barn. So I think that's I told we graduate like 17, like 15 to 17 girls this upcoming year. And I'm like, it's a shame you're not going to be a part of the heated indoor facility, movement in the future. So we've got a lot of hope that that's going to happen.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Okay. So we saw a video maybe a week ago, a couple days ago, where Emma was going around and asking people their favorite spring break location.
Yes.
Now, I don't know where Emma's nickname Pants comes from, and maybe we'll have Emma on the podcast and she can tell us. Yeah. But what is your favorite spring break destination other than Blacksburg, Virginia?
Ooh, so, it is common knowledge as a lacrosse player, you're never going to get a spring break. When I was in college, I love my classmates are my best friends in the whole world. We were so cohesive. It's 7 of us. So we were like, okay, well, since we're not going to get a spring break, we're going to go away every winter or at least every other winter. So we did trips in the wintertime before preseason, which wasn't the best idea, but we went to Cancun one winter break and we went to Punta Cana the other. So I'd like to think that we still kind of had that spring break vibe going for us just a few months earlier. So those were some pretty epic locations to go with your 6 best friends when you were in college. So I'd like to think I had that spring break opportunity. We just did it in December.
The tropical spring break vibes, unbeatable. Unbeatable. When you played at Duke, who are your 3 biggest rivals? I think I can guess. And then who would you say are your 3 biggest rivals now at Virginia Tech? Is there any overlap?
Okay, so when I was at Duke, UVA, they beat us in 2 Final Fours, and always like upset us, but we had some of our best, but also some of the best games against them. So I could not stand UVA, and have a total distaste for them. Even though I respect their coaches and like their players, but yeah, UVA was definitely public enemy number 1. Then came Northwestern. Again, same reason. My final 3 years of college, we basically kind of like went toe to toe with them for the number 1 ranking every week in the season, and they beat us in 1 Final Four. Had some of my coldest days up in Evanston, where I couldn't feel my hands or feet or face playing them. So Northwestern, and the ironic thing too, I don't know if you know this, Pat, but my brother, who's a Hokie, he would go on to marry a former Northwestern lacrosse player. So she had 3 national championships. So my sister-in-law won 3 national championships.
Oh my God.
on my second most hated team. And she's a heart surgeon now at Duke Hospital. So I literally went from hero to zero in the family when she entered the picture. But
Oh
yeah,
my
so my brother
gosh.
married a former Wildcat, which again was public enemy number 2. So I would say UVA, Northwestern, and then UNC, just by nature of it. Those were my favorite games. I as a player at Duke and a coach at Duke, I have a really good rivalry, like in terms of like coming out of the successful end of that rivalry. But it'd be epic. We take this little like commuter bus, like just like a public transportation commuter bus, like with the rails you hold on to and stuff. When we would play at UNC, you'd take it that 15-minute stretch from Duke University campus to UNC, and that thing would be rocking, like literally rocking back and forth, looking like we were going to tip it over. That was a fun tradition as a player. And obviously that's the huge rivalry as a Duke student athlete. So those are my three biggest rivalries, some of the best inspired, some of the best lacrosse, but also some of the most heart-wrenching losses. Here, here I would say, I mean, there is UVA, just Commonwealth clash, and just wanting to win the state of Virginia. So UVA is definitely still on the list. And then, and I guess still number 1 on the list. So that's a little carryover from college Kristen to professional Kristen. But UVA, I would say Clemson's kind of like a budding one, I didn't like the way last season went down. They're building a program. We're rebuilding a program. So we're fighting for recruits all the time. I mean, there's a lot of crossover in the type of kid we recruit and what those kids are looking for out of their college experience. And I think there's some serious crossover between Clemson and Virginia Tech there. So I would say I would throw Clemson on that list. And then I would do my alma mater. And I like bless our kids here. They really get up for that game against Duke. 2 years ago in my first year here, we lost by 1 goal, like 15-14. Last year, we go and we upset them in triple overtime. So I think I appreciate that our players here have kind of got behind the importance of that game to me. So I would throw that Duke game on the list.
Funniest girl on the team?
Oh, gosh. There's different funnies. Gosh, who makes me laugh? There's so many of them that make me laugh. Let me look at this. I'm looking at a roster real quick. Who's like Jane Brewer, one of our freshmen. She's like a creature. I mean, she is out there about who she is, and she says and does the funniest stuff. So she definitely keeps me on my toes, laughing. Yeah, I would say her. She's fun. She's really funny. A lot of our freshmen have some really funny humor, and it's like, usually I feel like freshmen don't share it with you, but I feel like it's great because they share it. Zoe Stenzel's another one. She's another freshman that has hilarious like facial reactions, and like she says really funny stuff. So our freshman class definitely kind of actually keeps me laughing because I'm like, wow, you actually said that out loud, and I can't believe you said that out loud, but it's really funny.
And who is the biggest locker room hype woman on the team?
Ooh. So it's tough because like when our coaches enter the locker room on game day, the team's already done their like, Enter Sandman and all of that stuff. And so it's kind of like, for me, I kind of look around and see who's the most sweaty, they'll play like the song from Magic Mike, and like you just hear like screams, the locker room goes crazy. And I'm just trying to picture like who's in the middle of that dance floor in the locker room. I think Mauro O'Malley is always a crazy dancer. I think Mia Manjin, like Katie McCarthy, I think they go hard in the pregame locker room. I heard Sarah Gresham went like absolutely bonkers, like in the locker room before the Louisville game. So I think those are probably some of the prime suspects for that.
Love it. Love it. So we have a few letters from the lunch pail, which are submitted from either Twitter or some former players that I did do some sourcing from.
Cool.
So the first one comes from Kendall Welch. She says, how is it coaching with little kids? And then I added on to this, do you see lacrosse in Caslin and Lane's future?
Oh my gosh. Oh my God, Kendall, that's such a cute question. I was like, I may regret this, but I did it. I signed on to at least be the assistant coach of Caslin, my soon-to-be 6-year-olds. She's in the K-League, her first spring of organized lacrosse. It starts at the end of this month, and I have signed on to coach her. And so TBD on if that is going to work out. We've got an interesting dynamic as mother and daughter. Both of my parents coached me in my sports, like all youth through, like club. So I am the product of a coach's kid, and my kids will probably be the same way. I think it's so fun. It's honestly a breath of fresh air coaching the little ones, and just trying to like make it fun and make them fall in love with the game and competing, but they have to have fun. So I think I have to remind myself that when I'm coaching the 5 and 6-year-olds at the end of March, that like, this is supposed to be fun. It doesn't need to be like, I don't need to put together a practice plan and, have them be so organized and paying attention. So I'm looking forward to that. I also really want to coach my daughters in basketball. So that's like a dream goal of mine as well, is to be a youth basketball coach.
Love it. Especially watching the Queens of Castle this year. It's always fun to get into women's hoops. Taylor Caskey says, what does coach look for when she's recruiting?
Ooh. Okay. So, two things after being in the ACC for 2.5 years, two things that are hard to coach. You must have, it's speed. You have to be fast. And you have to have stick work. I think sometimes we say, oh, we can develop that, but I think you have to come in with a high level of stick work at this level in order for us to develop you the way we want. And so I would say speed, stick work. And then outside of that, I do like I try to figure out like what are their priorities? What do they want? How are they as a teammate? How do they go about it? Trying to like assess those intangible things. We want people who are going to be unbelievable competitors, but also great teammates and be very coachable. And so trying to find those things as well, but speed and stick work for sure.
And then we have two from Sarah Lubno to take us home here. One, I want to know which win was most memorable or her favorite at Tech so far.
Ooh. I would say 3. In year 1, we had 2 really awesome wins. We beat JMU for the first time in program history up at JMU. That hands down was a favorite. I remember walking off the field with my arm around Sarah Lubno and Morgan Berman. And I was happy that they got that win before they graduated. And so that was really, really special to me and meaningful. Later that spring, we would go on to beat Notre Dame. The Notre Dame head coach was my assistant coach when I was a student athlete at Duke. So kind of like to be able to beat her the first time going up against her as a head coach, that was a really awesome win. And then last year, the win at Duke, again, that had some more like personal reasons for me to be able to beat my old coach. But I would say those are probably my 3 favorite wins thus far.
And then the last question, what other Virginia Tech athlete would Coach WAAGS want to recruit to her team?
Ooh, stick Liz Kitley on the draw. Put a stick in Georgia Amore on the attacking end. Honestly, I think those are, like literally my parents always joke about it. They're like, well, they want to do an extra year as a lacrosse player. I'm like, no, they've got bigger ambitions, like getting paid and, playing professional, mom and dad. But we would love to develop them into lacrosse players. There's a lot of things there that we could build off of, even without having experience. And then just like a little plug, one of my also favorite student athletes here is like Emma Inch on our swim and dive team. And so I just think she's like the ultimate teammate. She's got great positive vibes. And so would love to also have her in a Hokie lacrosse jersey.
Well, Coach, I owe Sarah Lubno $100 because she did say, I bet $100 it's Liz Kitley. So
yep, put her on the draw. Like nobody's gonna get that ball from her.
Exactly. Well, Coach, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on. Any last minute Sharky shout outs, we like to call them. Any Sharky shout outs, anyone you want to highlight, anything you want to put out there to Hokie Nation, this is your opportunity here now.
Gosh, I feel so lame. Nothing comes top of mind, but I mean, just appreciative to be here, and don't count us out. We're gonna keep this train rolling and get some good wins. So hopefully everyone can continue to tune in.
That's Coach WAAGS of the WAGBO Winnebago. We will see you around campus this spring, Coach. Check them out. Notre Dame, noon on the day of the spring game. So before you go over to spring game, which I believe kicks off at 3 o'clock, head on over to Thompson Field at noon to check out the Notre Dame game, as well as a handful of other awesome ACC games this spring. And Coach, of course, we'll see you at a tailgate this fall as well.
I know. And I got to get some of your merch. I got to talk to you behind the scenes about getting that merch. But yeah, I know it's always fun to run into you guys.
Love it. Thanks, Coach. We'll talk soon. Good luck.